I think the biggest problem is the ineffectiveness of the Department of Economic Development. These Hail Mary deals we did with Fisker and Bloom, throwing tens of millions of dollars at a handful of companies, trying to pick winners and losers, and unfortunately doing what happens often in those cases, picking losers, has left us with a chronic unemployment problem. I think the focus has to be on small employers. There are 26,000 small employers in the state of Delaware. There's about 30,000 unemployed people looking for work. If we can roll back regulations on small employers, if we can have tax policy that is something that small employers can figure out what their taxes are going to be going forward, if they can figure out what the rules and regulations are going to be, those folks can add jobs and we can cut into that unemployment rate dramatically.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Dr. Perry?
I think the paradigm, the unit of business is actually becoming the individual, and I think we need to recognize that a little bit more. Small business is great. They're not going to provide the kinds of jobs I think that we need. They're great jobs. But we basically live in a society of contractors. I'm one of them. One of the 30,000, whatever you said, was unemployed. PhD chemical engineer with an MBA. There are no jobs. Okay, they're projects. We work contracts. We need to, as a government, facilitate individual work. And as we need to address challenges, as I pointed out, for global warming, more forming of groups ad hoc and local to start dealing with the issues.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Governor?
First of all, Mark, I think you mentioned 8%. The unemployment rate in Delaware is actually 6.9%. It's significantly better than the national average and has been. That being said, there are 30,000 people in our state who want to be working and who are not. But let's take what Mr. Craig just said. You know, he talked about the funding for some of these other companies. When those three employers, the Valero Refinery, General Motors and Chrysler all closed their factories, it created a gaping hole in the state. Those three employers represented by far the best opportunity for high school graduates in Delaware to enter the middle class for decades. They all closed within the space of a year. So we had a choice to make. We could either fight to do everything we could to put people back to work and have people make things again in Delaware, or we could give up on those workers. And if Mr. Craig had his way, we would have an empty building, a decaying factory, and a rusting refinery. I wasn't going to give up on those workers.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate, we do have a couple empty buildings. One down, the Chrysler one now is a field, a flat field, and the Bloom, the Fisker building is an empty building.
And the Bloom factory is they've started to do some of the site work. That factory will be built. We are certainly hopeful for Fisker. This is a company which has raised over $1 billion in private capital. They have showrooms all over the world. But the refinery, if you had your way, that refinery would be rusting right now. Those hundreds of people would not be back to work. That's your approach. And it's unfortunate that you've joined the likes of Sarah Palin and others who are betting against American workers. That's essentially what your strategy has been. And we are thrilled because in the small business arena, whether it's Miller Metal in Bridgeville, whether it's FlowSmart in Seaford, whether it's the Archer Group in Wilmington, or dozens and dozens of others, growing, adding jobs.